In this video, we're going to look at the main property view and a few of the more common editors. Let's start by selecting Spacer Grid 1. So here we have the property view with the title at the top and the general attribute group. The subsystem and model notes buttons will be covered in a future video. If you'd rather not wait, you can pause the video and press the help button to dig into the Snap User's Manual. The main property view section describes both features pretty well. Alright, let's take a look at the component name editor. This is a simple one-line text editor. Just click in the field and start typing. When you're finished, hit enter. The button to the right here lets you select the snap variables to include in the name. A lot of properties can use snap variables. We'll point them out as we go along, but the nitty-gritty detail will have to wait until later videos. Next is the grid number editor. This is a pretty standard integer editor used in most plugins. Like the name above, just click and type. The description property has a fairly typical looking editor with an edit button and some indication of the current value, which is currently blank. The same editor is used almost everywhere to edit long blocks of text. You can enter as many lines of text as you like here. This section will let you insert variables directly into the text. Now that we've made some changes, it seems like a good time to talk about undo and redo. The model keeps track of each change so that they can be undone. We can see what the last change was by looking at the undo menu item here. If we click this item, it will undo the change we just made to the description, just like this. If we are in more of a hurry, we can use the undo button on the toolbar. If we decide we actually wanted those changes, we can repeat them all with the redo button. Next, we'll look at blockage area ratio. This property is using the real value editor, which is easily the most common editor you'll find. Like grid number, you can just click in the field and enter a value. The default value for most reals is unknown. This means no value has been entered. Unknowns always show up in red to make them easier to see. The engineering units for each property are listed next to the value. These two are ratios, so they have a dash indicating no unit. Mixing vane angle, however, is in degrees. The rest are in meters. If we enter a value for vane blockage ratio, you'll notice the focus immediately moves to the next property. We can also use Tab to skip to the next property without changing the one we're on. And we can skip backwards by holding Shift and hitting Tab. The button to the right lets you select a snap variable. If we press it, we get a list of all the variables with compatible units. If we select one, say R3, then the editor updates to show that it's now using the value of R3. It's shown with blue text to make it easier to see what's using the variable. The last property in Spacer Grid is a grid material. This is a reference to another component, and it uses the same standard component selector as most other references. The currently selected component and its icon are displayed here. The blue S, or Select button, will pop up a list of the available components to select from, in this case, materials. This blue S is the standard Select button. You can expect to see it on any editor that selects components. If we select Material 10 here, we can see that the grid material value is updated. The next editor we're going to look at is in the Fill component. The Fill type property uses a pretty standard drop-down editor. Drop-down editors are often used by properties that enable and disable other properties. In this case, if we set Fill type to 12, that enables the Table Signal property. So far, we've looked at the standard editors that are used by most plugins, but each plugin has their own custom editors. They're built to handle the special cases, but they all follow a few common guidelines. For example, the Fill Inlet editor looks fairly typical. Uses the normal Edit button on the right and displays its current value on the left. In this case, a connection to the inlet of the first cell of pipe 21. If we press the Edit button, we get a very specialized dialog used to edit the inlet or outlet connection of a hydraulic component. We'll talk more about these specialized editors in later videos, but for now, just notice that this dialog has OK and Cancel buttons. If you press Cancel, any changes you make in the dialog will be thrown away. If you press OK, then the model will be updated with your changes. The same applies anytime you see a dialog in the model editor with OK and Cancel. The last editor we'll look at is in Pipe 21. Pipe 21 has some of the same properties in editors that we saw earlier, including name, number, description, and inlet. The one we want to look at is component geometry, which also looks pretty normal. But let's look at the geometry dialog. There's a lot going on in here that we'll go over in a future video. But for now, notice that this dialog has a close button rather than OK or Cancel. That means that any changes you make in this dialog will change the model immediately. If you want to take back anything you've done, you'll need to use undo. You can expect this behavior anytime you see a dialog with a close button.